What's up, everybody? We have got some updates about the situation in Venezuela, what happened over the weekend, and how many of Maduro's security team were taken out by Delta Force when they went in and absolutely demolished this mission within a matter of hours. Insane news coming out today. We've also got some images that I want to talk about, which are quite interesting, and then some other bits of news around the Venezuela situation and the geopolitics that's going on around there. Absolutely insane news over the weekend. Whether you're for it or against it, it doesn't really matter if you're an American citizen like me. What is interesting is that it actually happened, and this bit of news is legitimately crazy to hear. So we're going to get into it today. Before we get started, though, let's talk about sponsors. Check out Chug, 10% off, link down below for the best drinking vessel in the world. If you're like me and you're wanting to start buy things that'll actually last you a lifetime, get yourself a Chug. 10% off, link down below, handmade here in the UK, ships to America. Free customization as well, and a free bag. Also, check out Morale. Listen, a lot of this news can be it can be quite heavy. Learning about all this stuff, it can be heavy. Talking politics all the time and talking military all the time, it can be heavy. Morale is your solution to that. We're trying to get people outside as much as possible. If you're here in the UK, it's quite hard to get outside at the moment because we have had an insane amount of snow. Insane. Check out Morale, check out the socials, buy yourself some drinks, all that good stuff. All right, I don't want to waffle on too long. I do want to talk about this. Let me pull this up real quick. For those of you wondering, we're going to be talking news today. And then tomorrow, we're actually going to be breaking down Cappy Army's video about how Delta Force actually did the raid, which I'm very, very excited for. That video will be out tomorrow, or I might get a bit too excited and just release it today. But we'll see. We'll see about that. Okay, this is the biggest part of news that I wanted to go over. We have got a bunch of other stuff, including these insane images that people have been like memeing and changing. Someone put like a VR thing on him. Someone had been swapping people and putting friggin' Obama in there and stuff. This image is now iconic, isn't it? But this is the news I wanted to talk about here. If you haven't seen, this is Ground News. They are an unbiased source of information for your news. I'm telling you right now, if you want to get legitimate information, if you are in the military, I advocate for this. If you're in the military and you want to know information, you want to do it as unbiased as possible. You want to be the best version, the best soldier you can possibly be. And that means finding information that isn't within a sphere of one political ideology. You need to get news from all over the place. That's what makes a good soldier, is to understand everything that's going on. And Ground News is the place for that. It tells you here if it's left or right leaning or center leaning on the right hand side. And more importantly for me, it tells you who's funding the news that has said this stuff. So check it out. Link down below. You can get a discount. Anyway, large part of Maduro's security team killed during the U.S. raid, Venezuela defense minister says. On Saturday, U.S. Special Forces seized Nicolas Maduro in helicopter-borne strikes on military sites in Caracas. General Vladimir Padrino, I think, said a large part of Maduro's security team was killed. Now, I said this in Saturday's video. I was like, there's got to have been casualties. You don't just go in and take a leader, especially someone like the US Special Forces, without casualties happen. But this is actually going into how many of them are actually killed. We're going to get into it. Images showed Nicolas Maduro blindfolded. We're just showing you that image. Vice President has assumed interim authority of Venezuela top court backing, while General Vladimir Vedrino, I keep getting that wrong, don't I, said the armed forces have been activated nationwide to guarantee sovereignty. The United Nations Security Council will convene on Monday to discuss the U.S. attack, which Antonio Guterres called a dangerous precedent, while Russia and Chinese criticized the most controversial intervention since the invasion of Panama 37 years ago. They're going to say that. They're going to say that. I did see a really funny thing where Ukraine's president, Zelensky, actually said, hey, if you can take out these leaders this quick, then go get Putin. Go get Putin. Okay, we've got a couple sources here. So down at the bottom here, these are all the articles from different people. And we've got 32 Cubans killed by Al Jazeera, and then 30 Cubans killed here. So we're talking about the actual security team, all right? I think this is important because it does go into what his security team looked like and how effective Delta Force actually was when they went in and got him, right? But I know it doesn't sound like much. 32 fighters killed. Do you understand that this team went in, got the Venezuelan leader and took out, 30 to 32 fighters. Took them out on this. This is a CQB operation, getting in and out within hours. Like, they were done quick. They were in and out in no time. Took out 30 to 32 Cuban fighters. Is absolutely insane. Absolutely insane that happened. All right. And the fact that the Cubans, which is interesting, but they were part of the bodyguard. We're going to get into the whole Cuban thing situation. But this is a security team that would have been relatively decent fighters. They are armed individuals. The moment Delta Force get the rounds down, the moment the helicopter lands, that's it. It's game on. You're not going in sneaky beaky. You have got the momentum of force to be as quick as possible. That only lasts like maximum 10, 15, 20 minutes before everyone's on high alert, everyone's kicking off. And so how quick, I'd love to have seen through the eyes. We know that there was footage going on. Where is I've got images here. This is the operation room. So they were getting live feed of what was going on. They're seeing what's going on. I would have loved to have seen that footage. Absolutely love to have seen that footage. What is interesting, though, you can't see it in these images, but there are images floating around where this behind, I guess you can kind of see it. They were monitoring Twitter or X here on the screen behind them, which I find very interesting that is like a priority for them. But they're in this room. They are getting a live feed of what's going on, live information. I would have loved to have been in there so that I could genuinely break this down and see what's going on. Okay. 32 Cubans killed during U.S. attack on Venezuela. The Cuban government said 32 of its nationals were killed during the U.S. operation to capture Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro, providing protection at Venezuela's request. Now, if you don't know, there is quite a long history of Cuba and America going at it. And the fact that his security team were Cubans, I think is very, very interesting. The U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio described Cuba as a disaster run by incompetent, senile men and said the U.S. will use leverage gained from its oil blockade and military buildup to achieve its aims in Venezuela. Cuba called the U.S. strike a criminal act of aggression and state terrorism and said it would pay tribute to those killed after ferocious resistance against the attackers or bombings. Very, very interesting bit of news. Now, I do want to get into this part here because, as you know, on Saturday when I was talking about the bombings and the raid and all this other stuff, my biggest concern was I really hope no civvies were killed in this. I really hope no civvies were killed in this. Unfortunately, I think that quite a few were. Because if 32 fighting men were killed, Cuban security team were killed, and we've seen that the death toll has rise to 80, that means there's been quite a few people that have unfortunately died. The death toll from the U.S. military operation in Venezuela has risen to 80, as reported by the New York Times, citing a senior Venezuelan official. ECOWAS, I think that is, urged the international community to respect Venezuelan sovereignty and territorial integrity following the U.S. military operations that captured President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores. President Donald Trump stated that the U.S. military action resulted in the capture, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, we already know. Venezuelan officials have called for the release of Maduro and Flores. Yeah, it's not going to happen. It doesn't say, you know, we're talking about civvies here, which genuinely makes me sad. I'm wondering if I can get, it's saying that the New York Times said this. Can we find that New York Times article on here? It doesn't look like we can. Going on to a random one here. God, the ads on these days on some of these frigging websites are just horrific, aren't they? NATO, we're going on to something else here. Yeah, it's just saying that the New York Times has said it's going to be up to 80 people. That makes me sad because we know that civvies have been caught up in this. And as you all know, listen, whether you're for and against this capture, there's a lot of people in America celebrating this. And, you know, to some extent, rightly so. Maduro was put in power, a lot of people say unlawfully. And I'm not going to get into the geopolitics of that and whether it's right or wrong. But what I am going to say is it's horrible to see civvies getting caught up on this shit. We see it time and time again that it's the ego of the few that ruin the lives of the many. And that is unfortunate, isn't it? Over here, we've got Venezuela interim president offers U.S. cooperation after Trump says further strike possible. So it could carry on. Although we have seen that this was done very quickly. We've seen how effective U.S. Special Forces are to get in and out in no time. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated that the U.S. does not intend to govern Venezuela direct and will use economic pressure for reforms, even though Trump did say something else against that. And we're going to actually elaborate on that right here. Rubio indicates U.S. won't run Venezuela, but will use oil blockade as leverage for changes. On Saturday, U.S. commandos seized President Nicolas Maduro in a risky raid, blah, 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 blah. Marco Rubio said it was the right decision. The operation followed the U.S. push. We're trying to get information on the geopolitics here. Rubio clarified on Sunday that the U.S. would influence Venezuela through policy, framing the operation as law enforcement tied to narcotics I can't read, guys. I can't read. Indictments. I do know this, that if they don't make the right decision, the United States will retain multiple levers of leverage. While Rodriguez condemns the raid, several governments criticized the operation as a regional stability risk, and U.S. officials said they might work with her as if she cooperates. Long term, the U.S. hopes to bring America and international oil companies to reshape Venezuela oil industry. So we're going into oil here. Surprise, surprise. It was never really about the drugs. It was all about the oil. Listen, what's going to happen here is we know that the US is gonna I'm not going to say manipulate, but shape the way Venezuela is made in the future. It's politics in the future. We know that, don't we? Whether they say it or not, we all know what's going to happen here, don't we? We've got some more pictures here released of Maduro in New York. This is him arriving in New York. Now, I do have to say, when I first saw these images, I was a bit like, is it AI? Is it real? Is it not? You've got to be very, very careful now on whether or not this shit's AI. So just be very careful of that. All right, guys. That's the update. I'd love to know what you think. Are we seeing more escalation here? Is it done? In and out, done, things change, we don't have to worry about it anymore? Or is it just going to get a little bit more complicated? I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. What does this mean for the war in Ukraine and Russia? Do you think America could have done something like this with Russia? What does this mean with Taiwan being surrounded by China right now? We know that Russia and China are very much against what's happened in Venezuela. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. Let's start the discussion. The comments on Saturday's video were phenomenal. I was reading through them. Some actually genuine discussion in there. Let me know what you think. Check out Chug, 10% off, link down below, and check out Morale if you haven't already. Other than that, I love you all. Stay safe. Goodbye.